My name is Denise, and I'm 27 years old. Growing up was never easy with a stepsister who manipulated my mom at every turn. By 19, I found myself kicked out of the only home I'd ever known, forced to build my life from scratch. Now, 8 years later, I'm engaged to William, the most supportive man I could ask for. Ironically, his company just dropped my stepsister's husband for unethical practices, and she's convinced I orchestrated it all. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button, because family betrayal leaves wounds that never fully heal. I wasn't always the outsider in my family. My early childhood was filled with happiness, just me and my mom Sarah living in our small but cozy home in Portland. My father died when I was 5 from a sudden heart attack, leaving mom to raise me alone. Those years were actually some of the happiest of my life. Mom and I developed a special bond that I thought was unbreakable. We did everything together, baking cookies on Sunday afternoons, watching movies wrapped in blankets on rainy days, and taking small weekend trips to the coast when she could afford it. Mom worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and though money was sometimes tight, I never felt like I was missing anything. That all changed when I turned 10. Mom met Jack at a hospital fundraiser. He was a pharmaceutical sales representative who frequented the hospital for work. Mom was immediately smitten with his charm and stability. Within 6 months, they were seriously dating, and I was introduced to both Jack and his 12-year-old daughter, Amanda. I still remember that first meeting. We all went to a local pizza place, supposedly neutral territory. Amanda seemed shy but nice, offering me some of her dessert and asking about my favorite subjects in school. I was excited at the prospect of having a big sister. As an only child, I'd always wanted a sibling to share secrets with and navigate life together. Amanda showed me pictures of her room and talked about how we could have sleepovers and do each other's hair. I went home that night telling Mom how much I liked them both. The courtship moved quickly, and within a year, Mom and Jack were engaged. The wedding was small but beautiful, held in Jack's backyard. I was the flower girl, and Amanda was a junior bridesmaid. During the reception, Amanda hugged me and said, "We're sisters now." I was so happy and naive. We moved into Jack's house since it was bigger than ours. I got my own room painted light blue at my request. Amanda's room was across the hall, a larger space with a window seat that I secretly envied. The first few months were a period of adjustment as we all learned to live together as a blended family. Mom tried her best to make everything perfect, cooking family dinners and organizing weekend activities. The first signs of trouble were so subtle I barely noticed them. Little things started disappearing from my room: a favorite bracelet, my special pen set for school, small amounts of allowance money from my drawer. When I mentioned these things to Mom, Amanda would look concerned and help me search, only for the items to mysteriously reappear days later in obvious places I'd overlooked. Then came the little comments when adults weren't around. "That shirt makes you look bigger than you are," or "Your mom said she likes my school project better than yours." Small, poisonous statements designed to make me feel insecure and create distance between Mom and me. When I tried to tell Mom about these comments, Amanda would look hurt and confused, saying, "I was just trying to help her," or "I think she misunderstood me." Mom would give me that disappointed look and tell me not to be so sensitive. By the time I was 12, a clear pattern had emerged. Amanda had become the perfect daughter in Mom's eyes. She got good grades, helped with chores without being asked, and always had the right thing to say to make the adults laugh. Meanwhile, I was increasingly positioned as the problematic one: too emotional, too messy, too demanding. Jack wasn't much help. He clearly adored his daughter and was blind to her manipulation. When conflicts arose, he'd make weak attempts at fairness, but ultimately defer to Amanda's version of events. "Girls will be girls," he'd say. Or, "Let's all just get along." His passivity only emboldened Amanda. My teenage years became a battleground. Amanda would borrow my clothes without asking and return them stained or stretched out. She'd volunteer me for family obligations without checking if I had other plans, making me look uncooperative when I objected. She'd invite her friends over when I had important tests to study, for making the house noisy and chaotic. When I complained, Mom would sigh and say, "Why can't you be more flexible like Amanda?" The most frustrating part was that Amanda was careful to show her true colors only when no adults were watching. To Mom and Jack, she was the perfect angel. To me, she was a calculating tormentor who seemed to enjoy watching me lose my mother's affection piece by piece. Despite the increasingly toxic home environment I threw myself into school, academics became my refuge. I joined the debate team, took advanced placement classes, and maintained a 4.0 GPA. My teachers loved me, and I secured several academic awards. I thought maybe if I was successful enough, Mom would see my value again. But Amanda always found ways to overshadow my achievements. When I won a regional essay contest, Amanda coincidentally needed emergency dental surgery the day of my award ceremony, so Mom and Jack missed it. When I was elected class treasurer, Amanda announced her acceptance into a prestigious summer program at dinner the same night, completely hijacking the conversation. The pattern was relentless and demoralizing. By senior year of high school, home had become just a place to sleep. I spent as much time as possible at the library, at extracurricular activities, or at my best friend Jessica's house. Jessica was the only one who fully understood what was happening. Her parents often invited me for dinner, and her mom would look at me with a mixture of concern and compassion that made me realize how much maternal warmth I was missing at home. Throughout these years, I tried repeatedly to connect with Mom to recapture our old closeness. I'd suggest mother-daughter days or try to engage her in conversations about books like we used to, but she was always too busy, too tired, or already had plans with Amanda. The special bond we once shared had been systematically dismantled, and I couldn't figure out how to rebuild it. By 18, I had accepted that my home life wouldn't improve while Amanda was there. I focused on college applications, determined to create a better future for myself. When the acceptance letter from State University arrived with a partial scholarship, I felt the first real hope I'd had in years. College would be my escape, my chance to start fresh where no one knew me as the difficult stepsister. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come, and that my tenuous place in the family was about to completely unravel. The summer after my high school graduation should have been a time of celebration and anticipation. Instead, it became a period of escalating tension that would ultimately lead to the complete fracturing of my family. I received my acceptance to State University with a substantial academic scholarship that would cover about 60% of my tuition. While not a full ride, it was a significant achievement that I was incredibly proud of. Mom and Jack seemed pleased, offering brief congratulations before the conversation inevitably turned to something else. Amanda, who was 2 years older than me, had attended community college for a year before dropping out, claiming it wasn't challenging her intellectually. She was now working part-time at a local boutique and living at home. When my college acceptance came, I noticed a shift in her behavior. The usual subtle jabs became more frequent and pointed. "State University isn't really that selective," she commented when Mom mentioned my scholarship at dinner. "But it's good they have programs for everyone, I guess." I bit my tongue, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. But the comments continued. She began questioning whether I was emotionally ready for college, planting seeds of doubt in Mom's mind about my maturity. She'd bring up isolated incidents from years before as evidence of my instability. "Remember when Denise freaked out about that group project in 10th grade? College is nothing but group projects. I'm just concerned." I had been working 2 part-time jobs that summer, mornings at a local coffee shop and evenings waiting tables at a family restaurant. My goal was to save as much as possible for books and expenses not covered by my scholarship. I kept my money in a lockbox in my closet, adding to it weekly and keeping careful track of the growing sum. One evening in July, I came home from a double shift, exhausted, only to find my room in disarray. At first, I thought it was just Amanda borrowing clothes again, but when I checked my lockbox, I discovered that nearly $400 was missing. I had counted the money just 2 days earlier, so I knew exactly how much should have been there. Heart pounding, I went downstairs to find Mom and Jack watching TV while Amanda texted on her phone. "Someone's been in my room and took money from my lockbox," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Are you sure you didn't miscount or spend it yourself?" "I'm positive. I had $1,738 2 days ago. Now there's only $1,345. Amanda didn't even look up from her phone. "Maybe you should keep better track of your money instead of always blaming others." "I do keep track. That's how I know it's missing," I said, my frustration mounting. "The only other people with access to this house are sitting in this room." Jack shifted uncomfortably. Now, Denise, that's a serious accusation. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Yes, the explanation is that someone took my money, I insisted. I need it for college. Mom sighed that familiar disappointed sigh. Nobody took your money, Denise. You probably miscounted or forgot about something you bought. Can we at least look into it? Maybe check Amanda's room, I suggested, knowing it was a long shot. Amanda finally looked up, eyes wide with manufactured hurt. Wow, I can't believe you'd accuse me like that. I have my own money. I don't need yours. Then you shouldn't mind if we check, I countered. Mom stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. That's enough. I will not have you accusing your sister without any evidence. Apologize to Amanda right now. I stood there shocked by the unfairness of it all. I'm not apologizing for having my money stolen, Mom pointed upstairs. Go to your room until you can be civil. I was 18 years old, being sent to my room like a child while the real culprit sat smugly on the couch. I stormed upstairs, slamming my door in frustration. Later that night, Amanda knocked on my door. When I opened it, she smiled that secret smile I'd come to hate. Next time, find a better hiding place, she whispered, then walked away before I could respond. I never got that money back, and the incident was never mentioned again. But it marked a turning point in how I viewed my place in the family. I was not only unloved, but unprotected. My property, my feelings, my very presence in the home was subject to Amanda's whims, with Mom and Jack serving as her unwitting enforcers. The following week, I came home to find my laptop's screen cracked. It was my graduation present from Mom and Jack and essential for college. Amanda claimed she'd seen me drop it earlier that day, which was impossible since I hadn't used it at all. Still, Mom believed her without question and told me I should be more careful with expensive gifts. I had to use $300 of my remaining savings to repair it, money I couldn't afford to lose. When I tried to discuss setting boundaries about entering my room and touching my things, Mom accused me of being territorial and ungenerous. Amanda grew up as an only child too, but she's learning to share. Why can't you? The irony of this statement was completely lost on her. By August, I was counting down the days until I could leave for college. My room gradually transformed into a fortress. Anything valuable came with me to work or was hidden in increasingly creative places. I kept my door locked when I wasn't home, though I suspected Amanda had found a way to open it anyway. The night before I left for college, I overheard Mom and Amanda planning a spa day for the following weekend. Mom had never once suggested such an activity with me. The realization that she might actually be happier with me gone was like a physical pain in my chest. The next morning, Mom and Jack drove me to campus. The car ride was mostly silent, with occasional forced conversation about meal plans and class schedules. When we arrived, they helped carry my belongings to my dorm room, gave me awkward hugs, and left within 30 minutes. As I watched them drive away, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. For the first time in years, I could breathe without watching my back. That first semester at college was liberating. My roommate was pleasant but busy with her own life, giving me the space and peace I craved. I excelled in my classes, joined the business club, and even made a few friends who appreciated me for who I was. During that fall semester, I called Mom weekly, still hoping to maintain some connection. The calls were brief and superficial, with Mom often mentioning Amanda's activities without prompting. I didn't go home for weekend visits like many other students. I picked up extra shifts at the campus coffee shop instead, building my savings back up after the summer's losses. When Thanksgiving break arrived, I returned home with a mixture of dread and hope. Maybe the distance had improved things. It hadn't. If anything, Amanda had further cemented her place as the favored daughter. My room had been tidied in my absence, with several items mysteriously missing. The brief holiday was tense, with Amanda creating small conflicts and Mom taking her side without hesitation. I returned to campus determined to create a life completely independent from my toxic home environment. I had no idea that the complete severing of ties was just around the corner, and that my next visit home would be my last. I managed to avoid returning home again until the end of freshman year. When May arrived and the dorms closed for summer break, I had no choice but to pack up my belongings and head back to what was increasingly feeling less like home and more like hostile territory. The drive from campus to Portland was filled with anxiety. I had arranged to work full-time at the same restaurant where I'd waitressed the previous summer, hoping to spend as little time at the house as possible. My plan was to save aggressively, possibly find a cheap apartment with roommates before sophomore year, and gradually separate myself from the toxic family dynamic. When I arrived, the house looked the same, but something felt different. There was a new energy, an anticipation in the air that I couldn't identify. Mom greeted me with a distracted hug, immediately returning to preparing what looked like party food in the kitchen. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my bags. "Oh, we're having a little family gathering tonight," Mom replied vaguely. "Amanda has some news." My heart sank. Of course, my first night back would be centered around Amanda. "What kind of news?" Mom smiled mysteriously. "You'll find out with everyone else. Why don't you take your things upstairs and get settled? People will be arriving around 6. I trudged upstairs to find that my room had been redecorated in my absence. The blue walls had been repainted a neutral beige, my posters and photos removed from the walls, and many of my belongings rearranged or missing entirely. It looked more like a guest room than my personal space. When I asked Mom about it, she shrugged. "Amanda thought the blue was too juvenile. She helped me update it. Don't you like it?" The boundary violation was so breathtaking I couldn't even form a response. I simply closed the door and began unpacking, trying to reclaim some sense of ownership over the space. By 6 o'clock, the house was filled with Jack's family, some neighbors, and a few of Amanda's friends. I recognized Tyler, a guy Amanda had been dating on and off for the past year. He was 23, worked for his father's financial services company, and had the polished, slightly arrogant demeanor of someone who had never faced real adversity. Mom called everyone to gather in the living room where Amanda and Tyler stood holding hands, both grinning widely. "We have wonderful news," Amanda announced, her voice high with excitement. "Tyler and I are engaged." The room erupted in congratulations. I forced a smile and offered a perfunctory "congratulations" when Amanda looked my way. 21 seemed young to get married, especially for someone as emotionally manipulative as Amanda, but it wasn't my place to say so. Then came the second announcement. And Amanda continued, placing a hand on her stomach with theatrical significance. "We're expecting a baby in December." Another round of excited exclamations filled the room. Mom was crying happy tears, hugging Amanda and then Tyler. Jack was shaking Tyler's hand vigorously, already talking about being a grandfather. The scene was surreal, like watching a movie where everyone had been given a script, except me. During dinner, Amanda dominated the conversation with wedding plans and baby preparations. Tyler talked about the promotion he was expecting at his father's company, how they planned to buy a house in the suburbs, and how Amanda wouldn't need to work because he would take care of everything. The traditional gender roles made me cringe, but Amanda seemed delighted with the arrangement. As the evening wore on, I found myself increasingly isolated. No one asked about my freshman year or my plans for the future. I was essentially furniture in a room celebrating my stepsister's conventional achievements, while my academic success went unnoticed. After dinner, people moved to the living room for dessert. Mom brought out her prized crystal serving dish, a family heirloom from her grandmother that she only used for the most special occasions. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen it before this night. I was helping clear dinner plates when I heard a crash from the living room, followed by gasps and Amanda's distinctive wail. I rushed in to find the crystal dish shattered on the hardwood floor, dessert splattered everywhere, and Amanda standing nearby with tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, looking at Mom. "Denise bumped into me when I was trying to serve and it just flew out of my hands." I froze in disbelief. I hadn't even been in the room when it happened. "I was in the kitchen. I didn't touch you," I said, looking around at the sea of faces now staring at me accusingly. Mom's expression hardened as she looked at me. "Denise, how could you be so careless? You know what that dish meant to me." "Mom, I wasn't even here." "I was clearing dinner plates in the kitchen when I heard the crash," I protested, my voice rising with indignation. Amanda continued sobbing. "Why are you lying? You came in and bumped my elbow. The dish was too heavy for me to hold on to when I got knocked off balance." Tyler put his arm around Amanda protectively. "Take it easy, babe. Think of the baby." this comment redirected everyone's concern to Amanda's well-being rather than the truth of what had happened. Jack led Amanda to the couch while Mom knelt to clean up the shattered crystal, her face tight with anger and grief. I stood there speechless with rage and hurt. The injustice was so blatant, so absurd, that I couldn't process it. After 19 years, my mother still couldn't see through Amanda's manipulations. When the guests had left and Amanda and Tyler had gone upstairs, Mom confronted me in the kitchen. "I can't believe you would be so reckless and then lie about it," she said, her voice low and trembling. "Mom, I swear to you I was not in the room. Ask Jessica's mom. I was talking to her in the kitchen when we heard the crash," I said desperately. "Everyone saw what happened, Denise. Multiple people watched you bump into Amanda." "That's impossible because it didn't happen." I was nearly shouting now, years of accumulated injustice boiling over. "Amanda has been manipulating you for years and you can't see it. She takes my things, she lies about me, she turns you against me, and you let her—" Mom's face hardened. "That's enough. I will not listen to you slander your sister, especially on her special night. She's pregnant, for goodness sake." "She's not my sister," I shot back. "And being pregnant doesn't give her the right to lie and manipulate everyone." Mom pointed her finger at me, her voice deadly serious. "You will apologize to Amanda right now, or you can find somewhere else to stay this summer." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. In that moment, I saw my mother clearly for perhaps the first time. She had made her choice long ago, and it wasn't me. "I will not apologize for something I didn't do," I said quietly. "Not this time. Not anymore." Mom's expression was cold and final. "Then pack your things. I want you out of this house by tomorrow." My legs nearly gave out beneath me. Despite everything, I had never truly believed she would choose Amanda over me so completely, so finally. "You're kicking out your own daughter," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Your actual daughter." "You're giving me no choice," she replied, turning away. "If you can't be part of this family respectfully, then you can't be part of it at all." I climbed the stairs in a daze, my mind unable to process what had just happened. As I reached the top landing, Amanda emerged from her room, no sign of tears on her face now. "Heard Mom finally had enough of your attitude," she said, smirking. "Guess I'll have more closet space now." In that moment, I saw the truth of who she was, not just manipulative, but genuinely cruel, taking pleasure in my pain. "You won," I said simply. "I hope it was worth destroying a family for." "Please," she scoffed. "You were never really part of this family. Mom just felt obligated to you. Now she's free to be happy with us." I turned away, unwilling to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I spent the night packing everything I could into my car, leaving behind furniture and larger items I couldn't transport. As I packed, I wondered where I would go, what I would do. At 19, with limited savings and no family support, my future had never looked more uncertain. By morning, I had called Jessica, who immediately offered her parents spare room until I figured things out. When I carried the last of my bags downstairs, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, expressionless. "I'm leaving now," I said, hoping against hope that she would stop me, take back her ultimatum, show some sign that I mattered to her. She nodded stiffly. "I think that's best." I stood there for a moment longer, memorizing her face, wondering if this would be the last time I saw her. "Goodbye, Mom," I said finally, and walked out the door of my childhood home, not knowing when or if I would ever return. The first few weeks after being kicked out were a blur of shock, grief, and practical survival concerns. Jessica's parents were incredibly kind, insisting I stay with them as long as I needed. Her mother, Susan, hugged me the night I arrived, something my own mother hadn't done in years, and told me, "You always have a place here, Denise." I broke down crying in her arms, the maternal comfort I'd been starved of finally unleashing all my pent-up emotions. The restaurant where I had arranged summer work honored my employment despite my changed circumstances. I worked double shifts whenever possible, saving every dollar I could. My college had a policy that students with documented family estrangement could apply for independent status for financial aid purposes. With Jessica's mother's help, I navigated the complicated paperwork, submitted statements about my situation, and eventually secured additional grants and loans to cover what my scholarship didn't. It was during this period of upheaval that I first met William. He came into the restaurant with some colleagues after work. They were seated in my section, and I remember noticing how he actually made eye contact when ordering, unlike many customers who barely acknowledged servers as human. He left a generous tip and a note that said, "Your patience with our indecisive table was impressive. Thanks for the great service." He returned the following week alone this time and requested to be seated in my section. We made small talk as I served him, and I found him easy to talk to. He mentioned he worked in marketing at a growing tech company and was new to Portland, having relocated from Chicago for the job. There was no pretension about him despite his obvious success at a young age. He was 25 to my 19, established in his career while I was still figuring out my path. William became a regular at the restaurant, always requesting my section. Eventually, he asked for my number, but was respectful when I explained I wasn't in a position to date right then. "I'd still like to be friends if that's okay," he said. "You're one of the few people I've connected with since moving here." Friendship was something I could handle, and so began our relationship, meeting for coffee between my shifts, talking about books and movies, sharing stories about our vastly different upbringings. William had grown up in a loving, stable family with parents who supported his ambitions and respected his autonomy. His descriptions of normal family interactions sometimes made me sad for what I'd missed, but also showed me what healthy relationships could look like. As summer turned to fall, I moved into a tiny studio apartment with Jessica's help. It was barely more than a room with a kitchenette and bathroom, but it was mine, the first space I'd ever had that couldn't be invaded or altered without my permission. William helped me furnish it with secondhand finds, and a few new items he insisted were housewarming gifts, not charity. When it was time to return to college for sophomore year, I had a difficult decision to make. Commuting from my apartment would be challenging, but possible. Living on campus would be more convenient for classes, but would mean giving up my hard-won independent space. In the end, I chose to keep my apartment and commute. The sense of security it gave me was worth the extra travel time. Throughout my sophomore year, I maintained minimal contact with Mom. I sent her occasional texts with basic updates about school, and she responded with equal brevity. I heard through these terse exchanges that Amanda had given birth to a baby boy named Aiden in December. Mom sent a photo of herself holding the baby, her face radiant with grandmother joy. I felt a pang of something unidentifiable, not quite jealousy, not quite sadness, but a complex emotion tied to the realization that I was now even further outside the family circle. William remained a steadfast friend through this period. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give, respecting my need to focus on school and work. He introduced me to his colleagues, expanded my social circle, and showed me parts of Portland I'd never experienced despite growing up there. With him, I began to see a future beyond survival mode, one where I might actually thrive. By the end of sophomore year, I had secured an internship at a small marketing firm for the summer. The position was unpaid, which meant I still needed my restaurant job to cover living expenses, but the experience would be valuable for my business degree. When I shared the news with William, he mentioned that his company sometimes hired interns from his alma mater. "Would you be interested if a paid position opened up?" he asked. "The application process is competitive, but I could submit your resume." I hesitated, wary of mixing our friendship with professional opportunities. "Would that be awkward for you? I wouldn't want people thinking I got special treatment." "Your qualifications would speak for themselves," he assured me. "I'd just be making sure your resume gets seen." 2 weeks later, I interviewed for a summer marketing internship at William's company. I was terrified of embarrassing him or myself, but the interview went well. I was offered the position the following day, a fully paid internship with potential for part-time work during the school year if things went well. For the first time since being kicked out, I felt like my life was gaining positive momentum. The internship was challenging but fulfilling. I was learning practical skills that complemented my theoretical knowledge from school. My supervisors seemed impressed with my work ethic and ideas. And though William and I maintained professional boundaries at work, our friendship continued to deepen outside office hours. Meanwhile, through occasional text updates from Mom, I learned that Amanda and Tyler had bought a house in an expensive neighborhood with help from Tyler's parents. Tyler had been promoted at his father's firm and was doing very well. Amanda was apparently thriving as a stay-at-home mom, posting picture-perfect family photos on social media that Mom would sometimes forward to me as if I should be happy for the stepsister who had systematically destroyed my place in the family. I muted Amanda on all social platforms, unable to stomach the curated displays of her supposedly perfect life. I focused instead on building my own life, one that didn't depend on family approval or support. By the end of the summer internship, I was offered a continuing part-time position during my junior year with a promise of full-time consideration after graduation. When I shared this news with Mom in one of our rare phone calls, her response was lukewarm at best. "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Aiden is starting to walk? Amanda is throwing him a big first birthday party in December. You should come." The invitation felt hollow, especially after more than a year of minimal contact. "I'll check my schedule," I said non-committally, knowing I wouldn't attend. The thought of watching Mom dote on Amanda and her child while I stood awkwardly on the periphery was more than I could bear. As my junior year progressed, William and I finally acknowledged the romantic feelings that had been developing between us. Our transition from friends to dating was natural and uncomplicated, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be someone's priority, to have my feelings and needs considered important. That Christmas, William invited me to Chicago to meet his family. I was terrified, but agreed. The week I spent with the Harris family showed me what healthy family dynamics looked like. His parents welcomed me warmly, included me in traditions, and showed genuine interest in my life and aspirations. His younger sister made a point of bonding with me over shared interests. No one manipulated, undermined, or gaslighted anyone else. Disagreements were handled with respect and resolution. I left Chicago with a bittersweet understanding of what I'd been missing my entire life. When we returned to Portland, I finally agreed to see a therapist at William's gentle encouragement. The process of unpacking my childhood and family trauma was painful but necessary. With professional help, I began to understand that my mother's inability to protect me wasn't my fault, that Amanda's behavior stemmed from her own insecurities, and that I deserved better than what I'd received from my family. As graduation approached, I felt stronger and more centered than I had in years. I had a degree I'd earned despite obstacles, a job offer from the company where I'd interned, a loving relationship, and a growing circle of genuine friends. I was building the life I wanted on my terms. The pain of family rejection hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined me. What I didn't know was that my carefully constructed new life would soon intersect with my past in ways I couldn't have anticipated, forcing me to confront the family that had discarded me and the stepsister who had orchestrated it all. 4 years after being kicked out, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined on that painful day when I drove away from my childhood home with all my belongings crammed into my old car. I had graduated with honors, earning my business degree with a specialization in marketing. The company where I'd interned offered me a full-time position with promising advancement opportunities. I had my own apartment, a real one-bedroom now, not just a studio, in a pleasant neighborhood close to downtown Portland. Most importantly, I had William, whose unwavering support and love had helped me rebuild not just my life, but my sense of self-worth. William's career had flourished during this time as well. His innovative marketing strategies had earned him a promotion to marketing director, a position with significant influence in the company. At 30, he was one of the youngest executives in the firm, respected for his integrity as much as his business acumen. Our relationship had deepened gradually and naturally. We spent most nights at each other's apartments, had met each other's friends, and had established our own traditions and routines. William never pushed me to discuss my family beyond what I volunteered, but he provided a listening ear whenever memories or feelings surfaced. Through therapy, I had made significant progress in processing my childhood trauma. I understood now that my mother's behavior reflected her own insecurities and inability to establish healthy boundaries, not my worthiness as a daughter. I recognized that Amanda's manipulation was born from profound jealousy and a desperate need for validation that I couldn't take personally. This understanding didn't excuse their actions, but it helped me carry the weight of rejection without being crushed by it. My contact with Mom remained minimal and superficial. Occasional text messages, brief phone calls on birthdays or holidays, always carefully avoiding any meaningful discussion of the past. She would share updates about Amanda's family, Aiden's milestones. The birth of a second child, a daughter named Lily Tyler's, continued success at his father's company. I would respond with polite interest while maintaining emotional distance. I had not seen any of them in person since the day I left. Mom had suggested meetings a few times, always in contexts that centered around Amanda's family, holiday gatherings, children's birthday parties, but never just the two of us, never with any acknowledgement of what had happened. I always declined with vague excuses about work commitments. Then came the night that changed everything. William and I were having dinner at my apartment when he took my hand across the table looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Denise, these past 3 years with you have been the best of my life." He began, his voice slightly unsteady. Before I realized what was happening, he was kneeling beside my chair, a small velvet box in his hand. "I love your strength, your kindness, your resilience. I love the way you've built a beautiful life despite every obstacle. I want to build the rest of my life with you." He opened the box to reveal a stunning yet tasteful diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as overwhelming joy pushed aside every doubt and insecurity. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes." As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a sense of rightness, of coming home in a way I had never experienced in any physical house. William had become my home, my family, my safe place in the world. That weekend, we drove to Chicago to share the news with his family in person. Their genuine excitement and immediate inclusion of me in wedding discussions touched me deeply. William's mother hugged me and said, "I've always wanted a daughter, and now I'll have one." The contrast with my own mother's rejection couldn't have been starker. When we returned to Portland, I knew I needed to tell Mom about the engagement, regardless of our strained relationship. I called rather than texted, feeling that the news warranted an actual conversation. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "Denise, is everything okay? You never call on Tuesdays." The fact that she found a weekday call alarming rather than welcome spoke volumes about our relationship. "Everything's fine, Mom. Actually, everything's wonderful. I wanted to let you know that William proposed this weekend and we're engaged." There was a pause before she responded with forced enthusiasm. "Oh, that's... Congratulations. William is the marketing boy, right?" "He's the marketing director at Tech Vision," I corrected, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. She had met William exactly once briefly at a coffee shop 3 years ago and had apparently retained almost nothing about him. "Well, that's lovely. Have you set a date?" "Not yet. We're thinking maybe next spring." "Spring is a beautiful time for a wedding," she said, her voice warming slightly. "Amanda got married in May, remember? The flowers were just gorgeous." Of course she would bring up Amanda's wedding, which I hadn't been invited to. "Yes, I remember you mentioned that. You should talk to Amanda about vendors. She knows all the best ones in Portland." I bit back a sarcastic response. "I think we'll manage. Actually, we might have the wedding in Chicago where William's family is." "Oh." The disappointment was evident in her voice. "That would make it difficult for us to attend." The us clearly included Amanda Jack and their family, though she hadn't explicitly said so. "We haven't decided for sure yet," I said, unwilling to engage in that particular discussion. After some awkward small talk, we ended the call with Mom promising to tell Jack and Amanda my news. I felt a familiar hollowness after speaking with her, the echo of a relationship that should have been deep and nurturing, but instead remained superficial and one-sided. The following week, I was surprised to receive a text from Amanda. "Heard about your engagement. Congrats. Didn't know you were seeing anyone that serious." I replied with a simple, "Thank you," unwilling to give her more information about my life than necessary. She followed up immediately. "We should get together sometime, catch up. It's been too long." The message was so incongruous with our history that I laughed out loud. "Too long? Since what?" Since she manipulated our mother into kicking me out. Since she smirked as I carried my belongings to my car, I didn't respond. 2 days later, she texted again. Seriously, we're adults now. Time to put the past behind us. Mom would love for us all to be a family again. I showed the messages to William, who frowned. That seems suspicious. She's never reached out before, right? Never. And there's no acknowledgement of what happened, just this weird pretense that we're estranged sisters who drifted apart rather than… I trailed off, unable to succinctly describe the actual situation. You don't owe her a response, William said gently. Or a relationship. He was right, of course. But something about Amanda's sudden interest in reconciliation felt off beyond the obvious insincerity. I couldn't put my finger on it, but my instincts, honed by years of navigating her manipulations, were sending warning signals. I decided to ignore her messages and focus on our engagement. William and I created a private website for our wedding plans, sharing the link only with close friends and his family. We booked a venue in Chicago for the following April, a beautiful converted warehouse space with exposed brick and industrial accents that felt both elegant and unfussy, much like our relationship. Everything was going perfectly until the day William came home looking troubled. He poured himself a rare midweek glass of whiskey and sat heavily on the couch. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately concerned. He sighed deeply. "Something happened at work today that, well, it involves your stepsister's husband, actually." My stomach dropped. "Tyler? What about him?" William took a sip of his drink. His company was being considered as a financial services partner for one of our major projects. Standard procedure is to vet all potential partners thoroughly. Our compliance team found some concerning irregularities in their accounting practices. What kind of irregularities? I asked, though I already had suspicions. Tyler had always struck me as someone who would cut corners if it benefited him. Enough that we've decided not to move forward with the partnership and have reported our findings to the appropriate regulatory agencies. William looked at me intently. I recused myself from the decision-making process as soon as I realized the connection, but I wanted you to know because Amanda will somehow blame me, I finished for him. He nodded grimly. The timing with her sudden interest in reconciliation seems suspicious in retrospect. I wonder if she knew their company was being considered and was trying to use you to influence the process. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Of course, Amanda had never done anything without an ulterior motive. Her unexpected olive branch wasn't about family healing, it was about using me as a business connection. Sure enough, my phone rang the very next day, Amanda's name flashing on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "How could you do this to us?" she demanded without preamble, her voice shaking with rage. "Do what exactly?" I asked calmly, though my heart was racing. "Don't play dumb. Your fiancé's company just pulled out of a major deal with Tyler's firm and reported them to regulators. Tyler could lose his license over this. Was this your way of getting revenge?" I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had nothing to feel guilty about. First of all, I had no idea William's company was considering working with Tyler until after the decision was made. Second, William recused himself completely once he realized the connection. And third, if there are regulatory issues with Tyler's business practices, that's on him, not me. "You expect me to believe this is all just a coincidence?" Amanda scoffed. "After all these years of jealousy?" "Jealousy," I repeated incredulously. "You manipulated Mom into kicking me out of my own home when I was 19 years old. What exactly should I be jealous of?" "Oh, please, you were always jealous that Mom loved me more, that I had a real family while you just had her, that I got married first and had children while you were playing career girl." Her words were so divorced from reality that I actually laughed. "Amanda, I've spent years in therapy processing what you and Mom did to me. I understand now that your behavior comes from your own insecurities, not any actual problem with me. And I'm genuinely sorry that you're so empty inside that you need to tear others down to feel valuable. But I'm not that scared 19-year-old anymore. Your manipulations don't work on me now." There was a moment of stunned silence before she spat. "You'll regret this. When Tyler loses everything because of your vindictive little game, you'll be sorry." Tyler is losing everything because of his own unethical business practices. I corrected her. Maybe take it up with him. I ended the call, hands shaking, but mind clear. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to Amanda without doubt or hesitation. I had named her behavior for what it was, and refused to accept her distorted version of reality. My phone immediately began buzzing with texts from Mom. Amanda is very upset. What did you say to her? And why would William's company target Tyler's business? And finally, family should help each other, not tear each other down. I turned off my phone, unwilling to engage with Mom's predictable defense of Amanda. Some things never changed, but I had, and that made all the difference. The fallout from Tyler's professional troubles happened quickly. Within weeks, his father's financial services firm was under formal investigation for multiple regulatory violations. Tyler was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation's outcome. According to industry rumors, William heard the issues went far beyond the irregularities initially flagged by his company's compliance team. 3 days after my confrontational phone call with Amanda, she showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was thankful William was there with me when I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, looking simultaneously angry and disheveled in a way I'd never seen before. The polished, put-together image she usually maintained had cracked, revealing the desperate person beneath. "We need to talk," she demanded, pushing past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. William stood from the couch where we'd been watching a movie. "Amanda, I presume," he said, his voice neutral but stance protective. She barely glanced at him. "This is between me and my sister." "Stepsister," I corrected automatically. "And anything you have to say can be said in front of William." She paced the small living room, agitation evident in every movement. "Tyler's been suspended. The firm is under investigation. Do you have any idea what this is doing to our family, to our children?" I maintained a calm I didn't entirely feel. "I'm sorry your children are affected by this situation, but as I told you on the phone, neither William nor I had anything to do with the decision to report irregularities found during a standard vetting process." "You could fix this," she insisted, turning to William. "Tell them it was a misunderstanding, that the paperwork was just filed wrong or something." William shook his head. "That's not how corporate compliance works, Amanda. The issues identified were significant enough to warrant regulatory review. I couldn't interfere with that process even if I wanted to, which I don't. If Tyler's business practices were legitimate, he has nothing to worry about." Amanda's face contorted with fury. "Of course you'd say that. You're both enjoying this, aren't you? Watching my family suffer." "Nobody is enjoying this," I said firmly. "But your problems aren't our responsibility to fix." "You always were selfish," she spat. "Mom was right about you." The comment was meant to wound me in my most vulnerable place, my relationship with Mom, but I refused to let it land. "Is that why you're here, Amanda? To insult me? Because if so, you've accomplished your goal and can leave now." She changed tactics, her eyes suddenly filling with tears. "Please, Denise. We might lose everything. The house, the cars. What will happen to Aiden and Lily? They're innocent in all this." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost sad. "I'm not in a position to influence a corporate or regulatory investigation, and neither is William. If Tyler did nothing wrong, that will be established through proper channels." "So that's it? You won't help your own family?" She looked between us incredulously. "You stopped being my family the day you smirked while Mom kicked me out of the house," I said quietly. "You made your choice then. I've made mine now." Amanda's face hardened, the tears vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. "You'll regret this. When Mom finds out how vindictive you've been." "By all means tell Mom whatever version of events suits you," I interrupted. "She'll believe you regardless of the truth, just like she always has." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Amanda saw it and gave a triumphant smile. "Perfect timing. Answer it. Let's see whose side she takes." With a sense of resignation, I accepted the call and put it on speaker. "Hi, Mom. Denise, is Amanda there with you?" Her voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "Yes, she's here." "Put me on speaker." I didn't tell her she already was. "Amanda, are you okay? Jack just called me about Tyler." I'm trying to get Denise to help, but she refuses, Amanda said, her voice immediately shifting to a victimized whimper. She and her fiancé are behind all of this. I expected Mom's immediate agreement, her automatic taking of Amanda's side as she had done countless times before. But to my shock, there was a moment of hesitation. Amanda Jack told me that the investigation into the firm started months ago, long before Denise even got engaged, and that Tyler's father has been concerned about some of Tyler's decisions for quite some time. Amanda's eyes widened in surprise. That's not… Tyler said it was because of them. She pointed accusingly at us. Jack says Tyler has been making unauthorized investments with client funds. Mom continued, her voice uncharacteristically firm. That has nothing to do with Denise or her fiancé. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For perhaps the first time ever, Mom wasn't automatically accepting Amanda's version of events. Amanda couldn't believe it either. So you're taking her side now? She demanded incredulously. After everything. Another pause, longer this time. I'm not taking sides, Amanda. I'm telling you what Jack shared with me, which aligns with what Denise told me yesterday when I called her. I think you need to go home and talk to Tyler about what's really going on. Amanda looked as though she'd been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she finally found words. I can't believe this. My whole life is falling apart and neither of you cares. She stormed toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob to deliver a final barb. Enjoy your perfect little life with your perfect fiancée, Denise. Some of us have real problems to deal with. The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the pictures on my wall. In the sudden silence, I realized Mom was still on the line. Is she gone? Mom asked quietly. Yes. I confirmed, still processing what had just happened. Denise, She paused, seeming to struggle for words. Jack called me earlier with the full story about Tyler. What Amanda told me initially didn't add up, so I asked him directly. He said Tyler has been engaged in some very questionable practices for years against his father's explicit instructions. The investigation has nothing to do with your Williams company, though they apparently discovered some of the same issues during their vetting process. I sat down heavily on the couch, William's supportive hand immediately finding my shoulder. Why are you telling me this, Mom? Another long pause. Because I'm trying to… I don't know. See things clearly, I guess. For once. The implication that she hadn't seen things clearly in the past hung between us unaddressed but acknowledged. It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was the first crack in the wall of denial she had built around Amanda's behavior. Thank you for letting me know, I said, unsure how else to respond. Jack also told me that Amanda has been pressuring Tyler to take financial risks to maintain their lifestyle. That she's been difficult when he couldn't provide everything she wanted. The irony was almost too much. Amanda, who had painted me as the difficult, demanding daughter, was apparently exactly that in her own marriage. I'm sorry to hear that, I said neutrally. Mom sighed heavily. Your engagement party is next month, right, in Chicago? The question caught me off guard. We had indeed planned a small celebration with William's family and some close friends. Yes, but I didn't expect you would want to attend. Would it be all right if I came, just me, not Jack or anyone else? I looked at William, who nodded encouragingly. If you want to, yes. I'll send you the details. Thank you, Denise. Her voice was softer than I'd heard it in years. And congratulations again. William seems like a good man. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. William waited patiently, his presence grounding me as I processed what had just happened. Do you think she's finally seeing Amanda for who she really is? I finally asked. William considered this carefully. I think she's beginning to question her assumptions, which is a start. But real change takes time and usually requires acknowledging past mistakes, which seems difficult for her. He was right, of course. One phone call didn't erase years of enabling Amanda's manipulations or the pain of being rejected by my own mother. But it was something, a small opening where there had been only a wall before. I didn't know if Mom would actually come to Chicago, if this tentative thaw would last, or if she was capable of the deep self-reflection needed to truly repair our relationship. but for the first time in many years, I felt a flicker of possibility, where before there had been only resignation. Whatever happened with Mom, I knew my future with William was secure. We had built something genuine and strong, a relationship based on mutual respect and support, rather than manipulation and competition. In that, I had already found more family than Amanda, with all her desperate machinations, would ever know. In the months following Amanda's confrontation at my apartment, life moved forward with both unexpected challenges and joys. William and I continued our wedding preparations, choosing to focus on building our future rather than dwelling on the past. We selected flowers, finalized the menu, and found a photographer whose candid style captured the authentic moments we valued. Mom did come to our engagement party in Chicago, traveling alone as promised. It was the first time in over 7 years that we had spent more than a few minutes together. The initial awkwardness gradually eased as William's warm, inclusive family enveloped her in conversation and activities. I watched with a mixture of emotions as she interacted with William's mother, Martha, two women who had taken such different approaches to motherhood, finding common ground in their children's happiness. At one point during the weekend, Mom and I found ourselves alone on the balcony of Martha's condo, the Chicago skyline glittering before us in the evening light. "William's family is lovely," Mom said after a comfortable silence. "They've welcomed you so completely." "They have," I agreed. "It's been healing to experience what a supportive family feels like." Mom winced slightly, but didn't become defensive as she once would have. "I'm beginning to understand how much I failed you, Denise." The admission was so unexpected that I couldn't immediately respond. Mom turned to face me fully, her eyes meeting mine with an openness I hadn't seen in decades. "After you left, I told myself it was your fault, that you were too sensitive, too stubborn. It was easier than admitting I had chosen my husband's daughter over my own." Her voice cracked slightly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since that phone call with Amanda. About patterns I've allowed, things I've overlooked." "Mom," I began, unsure what to say. She shook her head. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Denise. I don't deserve that yet. I just want you to know I'm finally seeing things I should have seen years ago, and I'm so sorry for the pain I caused you." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of everything that had happened, but it was more than I had ever expected to hear from her. The apology felt genuine if incomplete. "Thank you for saying that," I said softly. "It means a lot to hear." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I'd like to try to be better, to be part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable with. No pressure, no expectations, just an open door if you ever want to walk through it." The metaphor wasn't lost on me, an open door in contrast to the closed one I had faced at 19. "I think I'd like that, Mom. Slowly." "Slowly is good," she agreed with a small smile. Back in Portland after the engagement party, William and I settled into final wedding preparations. I had decided after much consideration to invite Mom to the wedding in a mother of the bride capacity, though with tempered expectations about what that relationship might look like going forward. Progress was happening, but years of hurt couldn't be erased by one conversation. Amanda and her family were not invited, a boundary I maintained, despite Mom's hints that family unity would be nice. Some relationships were too toxic to resurrect, regardless of blood or legal ties. As for Tyler's professional situation, the investigations confirmed what had been suspected. He had been misappropriating client funds for years, using the money to maintain the lavish lifestyle Amanda craved. His father's firm distanced themselves from him, forcing Tyler to resign. Criminal charges were being considered by prosecutors. Amanda and Tyler were forced to sell their expensive home and luxury cars. According to Mom, they had moved into a modest apartment while Tyler looked for work with a significantly tarnished reputation. Amanda had taken a job as a receptionist at a local dental office, her first real employment in years. The reversal of fortune was dramatic, but not unexpected given the house of cards their lifestyle had been built upon. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only sadness for their children, who were innocent victims of their parents' poor choices. Mom mentioned that Amanda blamed everyone but herself for their situation. Tyler for his illegal activities, his father for not protecting him, the regulatory agencies for their witch hunt, and yes, me and William for supposedly triggering the investigation. She remained incapable of self-reflection or accountability, trapped in the same patterns that had characterized her since childhood. A week before our wedding, I received a text from Amanda. "I know I'm not invited to your wedding, but I want you to know that you've destroyed my family. I hope you're satisfied. My children have to share a bedroom now because of you." I showed the message to William, who shook his head in disbelief. The lack of self-awareness is almost impressive. "Should I respond?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "What would be the point?" he replied gently. "She's not in a place to hear anything you might say." He was right. I deleted the message without replying and focused instead on the joyful events ahead. Our wedding day dawned clear and bright in Chicago, a perfect spring Saturday that felt like a good omen. As I prepared with my bridesmaids, Jessica and two close friends from work, I felt a deep sense of peace. My journey from that traumatic day of rejection to this moment of celebration had been difficult, but had shaped me into someone stronger, more compassionate, and more discerning about the relationships I allowed in my life. Mom arrived at the bridal suite with a small package. "This was my grandmother's," she said, opening the box to reveal a delicate pearl bracelet. "I thought perhaps you might want something old for the ceremony." The gesture touched me deeply. "It's beautiful, Mom. Thank you." As she fastened it around my wrist, our eyes met in the mirror. "You look radiant, Denise. Truly happy." "I am," I confirmed. And it was true. Despite everything, or perhaps because of it, I had found my way to genuine happiness with a partner who valued and supported me completely. The ceremony was everything we had hoped for: intimate, meaningful, and filled with people who truly cared about us. Mom sat in the front row, dabbing tears as we exchanged vows. William's family surrounded her supportively, a visual representation of the blending of our lives. At the reception, Mom gave a brief but heartfelt toast, acknowledging that she hadn't always been the mother I deserved, but expressing pride in the woman I had become through my own strength and determination. It wasn't a full accounting of the past, but it was honest in its way, and I appreciated the effort it represented. As William and I danced our first dance as a married couple, I realized that the family I had lost had been replaced by one I had chosen and built intentionally. The pain of rejection had never completely disappeared, but it had been transformed into wisdom about what I would and wouldn't accept in relationships, about the importance of boundaries and mutual respect, about the difference between blood ties and true family bonds. Later that night, as we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, William pulled me close. "Happy, Mrs. Harris." "Happier than I ever thought possible," I replied truthfully. "And you?" "I got the best end of this deal by far," he said with a smile that still made my heart skip. "A brilliant, resilient, compassionate wife who amazes me every day." As we drove away amid sparklers and cheers, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Being kicked out of my home at 19 had felt like the end of the world, but it had actually been the beginning of a better one I had built myself brick by brick, choice by choice, with the support of people who truly loved me. The relationship with Mom was still tentative, a work in progress that might or might not ever fully heal. Amanda remained trapped in her own toxic patterns, unable to see her role in her family's downfall. But I had found peace regardless, building a life based on genuine love rather than manipulation and competition. Family, I had learned, was not defined by blood or legal documents, but by love, respect, and mutual support. The family William and I would create together would be built on those principles, breaking the cycle of manipulation and conditional love that had characterized my childhood. That perhaps was the most profound lesson of my journey, that while we cannot choose the family we're born into, we can choose the family we create, and in that choice lies tremendous power and healing. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt rejected by those who should have loved you most, I hope you know that it wasn't your fault and that you deserve better. Family should build you up, not tear you down. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to walk away and create the family you deserve. Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it.